Hello, everyone. Welcome to the session. My name is Saj Rai, and on behalf of Infosec Trade, I'd like to welcome you to this CISA Masterclass webinar. So I'll just quickly introduce myself and then we'll get into the day. So my name is Saj Rai. As you can see here, I have almost 2 decades of experience leading IT firms in various different industries. These are some of the certifications that I have: CISSP, CISA, CISM, CGIT, CCSP, and many others. And I've also been involved in training for almost a decade now. We mostly teach many of these courses that you see, CISSP and CISA, etc. So that's about me very briefly. What I plan to do today is to introduce you to CISA. I think many of you may already be familiar with what CISA is. Through that, CISA, the formalities, what you need to do in order to take the exam. And in the meantime, you'll also understand one of the best practices, what are the do's and don'ts. And finally, I'd like to also do a very small lesson with you, introductory lesson, just to give you an idea about what is expected in the CISA course. We'll end up with some questions, the type of questions that is expected in the exam to help you get a sense of how it will look like. Okay, that's the plan. We quickly understand what is ISACA. Okay, so when we need to know, if you're taking a CISA exam, we need to know about ISACA. ISACA is the International Professional Association and the other body which is behind this CISA exam, and of course some other exams which we will talk about a little later on. This is one of the oldest body and founded in 1969, as against very old body, very reputed and well known across the world. And it actually, the ISACA, it's an acronym. It actually stood for the term Information Systems Audit and Control Association. So we don't use that any longer. We just use the word ISACA. That should be good enough for our understanding, right? So the website is isaca.org. We'll kind of check that in a while. We'll kind of explore that very briefly. Okay, so that's ISACA. And so the detail we're going to talk about today is about the CISA exam, CISA. So these are some of the other credentials that ISACA provides. Of course, CISA is one of the most popular certification that they provide, CISA. Apart from that, the more popular ones are CIRISC, CISM, CGIT. They have introduced these CSX cybersecurity practitioners and certified data solutions engineer. These are very new, and this is something which you might want to explore. And apart from that, they have COVID, which is an ISACA framework, which we will kind of refer to many times when you're doing the CISA or many of these ISACA credentials. They heavily kind of take those materials from COVID. So, but COVID is quite a popular one. We will probably discuss that when we learn about CISA, but you can explore this on your own as well. And these are some of the other things that ISACA kind of provides credentials on. Anyway, so our focus today is mostly on CISA, so that is what we will be discussing. Okay, I think some people are still having audio issues. I'm wondering what happened. Okay, so this we'll kind of talk about CISA, the Certification Systems Auditor. So let me take you through their website. I think you'll find a lot of resources out there, and we'll come back to this. Just give me a moment. Here we go. I hope you're able to see it. So the website, of course, is isaca.org. You'll find all the information about ISACA here, and I would highly recommend that you explore this website, so understand the various things ISACA does, and also the credentials that the ISACA provides. As I said before, these are some of these certifications and the certificates that they provide. So let's explore CISA a little bit more. Okay, so let's learn about CISA. I will not discuss others for the moment. So you'll find all the information that you need to know about CISA here on this. So I'll kind of focus on some of the things here that we need to be aware of, right? So it talks about the various different job practice details. We'll discuss that. It gives you a list of resources that you can start. It also has this CISA practice quiz, etc., and to take the exam. So all the documents are here, how to apply for the certification. I'll talk about all these details as we go on. I'll talk about these things. What I want to do is quickly take you through the exam, right? Not this one. So this one. So this particular content is obviously something you'll find on the website itself. But I'll quickly take you through this to help you understand about the CISA exam. Okay. So Again, so these are some of the facts about CISA. So there are more than 151,000 professionals as of today. And this course is almost 42 years old. This is the first time the certificate was, first exam was held in 1978. So it's one of the oldest certification courses in the field of information security. Very, very popular. And this is also accredited by the American National Standards of Institute, ANSI. So under the ISO IEC 17024/2012. So ANSI accreditation is not, it's one of the most difficult accreditation process. And so being accredited by ANSI is it's setting up as a gold standard for any certification course. So CISA, of course, is very well known across the world. The benefits, of course, in terms of the salary, average salary, it's quite a lot, $110,000. This is again obviously the U.S. Metrics here, but you can extrapolate these to other countries as well, in the sense that CISA professionals are in high demand. There are requirements, regulatory requirements, or client requirements to have CISA professionals, and so with this kind of demand and the number of professionals available today, so you are bound to be recruited in a very salary. That's one part, okay? And again, so we'll talk about the experience level. We need at least 5 years of experience to become a to get that certificate. We'll talk about that in a while. And the exam itself, there are 150 questions. The exam is completed in 4 hours. It's a multiple choice questions with only one correct answer, and there are no negative answers there. So you only need to answer all of them. So I'll again talk about this in a little more detail. And also the CISA exam is now available. Lots of centers, testing centers across the world. It's 1,300. That's quite a lot, and multiple languages. And the good news is that it's available now online as well. With the COVID scenario, providing proctored exams. I'll quickly talk about that also. So benefits of becoming a CISA certified, of course, is the credential that you carry, the trust that you carry, the credibility that you carry when you have that CISA certification. It's not an easy exam, so you need to have that experience, the knowledge to take this particular exam and pass. So when you have this certification, you're certainly in that odd 1,000 people around the world today since the last 42 years. And so it increases your marketability and income potential. Those are, as what I mentioned before. And so for many employers, having a CISA certified is it's kind of a requirement. Very many jobs, especially in the US, it's a requirement. In India as well, many of the banks, especially they require, even insurance companies require CISA certified professionals to do those audits. So there's a lot of requirement as far as regulatory requirements to have a CISA certified professionals, right? So the bottom line is, when you are CISA certified, you are in that elite league of people who are in great demand, and they are seeing a lot of respect, a lot of credibility. So that's what these particular certification certificate is going to give you. Well, the domains, as we call it, job practice areas, I'll kind of do this a little more in detail after this. We'll go back to the website, we'll kind of check this out. So the first domain is the process of auditing information systems. Second domain, governance and management of IT. Third domain, information systems acquisition, development, and implementation. Domain 4 is information systems operations, maintenance, and service management. And domain 5 is protection of information assets. So it's a mixture of an auditing processes. Also, there is a fair bit of technical knowledge that you need to have to take the exam. Now, when most of the CISA participants that I come across, they generally have either a purely auditing background, like CA kind of a background, or they really also have a very technical background, that they have been a software developer or a network and so on, and kind of coming from that particular background and now becoming a professional. So just a quick polling I would like to take. So which one do you belong? So, or you could say both. You could say most from the auditing or most from the technical side of the world. Anyway, so let's talk about it. So you'll find this material on the website, so you can download it. So what I would like to do is, okay, this is an interesting one. So what to expect on the exam? is that this is not an IT security test. Okay, that's an important thing to understand. There are other courses which are focused on IT security test. This is not an exam. Okay, so you need to definitely understand the security terms, but your focus is on being able to apply that knowledge onto the CISA, onto the auditing scenario. So we'll kind of talk about that as well. Not a financial auditor exam as well, right? So while some of you may come from that financial auditing background, fine, but you don't need to know that for the exam. So like many of you come from like for example network security or disaster recovery. So you've never dealt with financial auditing, so you will not need to know that. Okay, so don't worry about it. It's not a computer technician exam as well. So they're not going to ask you about specifics about technology, like how it is and so on. So while you need to understand the technical terms, for example, you may need to understand what's a VLAN or a VPN, and what are the advantages of that, and why do we need to have those. From a security perspective, from the control perspective, you need to have that. But this exam is not going to test your knowledge on how to create that VLAN or how to do create those VPN, and also very detailed discussion on those. So not required. So like I said, having a general understanding about those computer terms is more than useful. So hence, so like many people from the non-technical background have a lot of apprehension. You can say, I've never dealt with technology. How is the exam going to be? So to make you understand, it's not going to be very technical exam, as you can see. It's not, again, security knowledge as well. There are, like I said, you need to have that knowledge, basic knowledge, and to be able to use that in a given scenario. That is important. Okay, so if you do not have the technical knowledge, don't worry about it. We will learn the information that is required in order to pass the exam, and it's not very difficult. Okay, and yeah, so as I said, we will use these auditing best practices, the concepts, to be able to audit your information systems. So we'll kind of talk about that briefly. Job practice areas, we talked about it, I think. So what I will do is I'll quickly take you through the website itself, and the website has all the information. So here we go. Okay, so it has all the information. I really highly recommend that you take a look at this site. So there are 5 domains. So we start with domain 1, which has about 21%. Okay, it covers. It's kind of very nicely this time. They've made some changes in the structure here this time. So they have every domain has now 2 parts, part A and part B. And anyway, so this one, information system auditing process, this is focused on having those basic knowledge about auditing and various IS audit, even to understand what is audit, okay, who are involved in audit, how do you start an audit. So all those things, and so sampling, evidence collection, etc. So we discussed that here. Typically, again, coming from an audit process, familiar with this. I intend to cover a few basic points from here today as a kind of introduction to this season. So we'll kind of deal with that few. How is scoring divided between part A and part B of the domain? So it's not really divided between these part A and part B, just a way to structure the particular domain. So there is no fixed division of scores between these parts. Okay. While the domain 1 has the 21%, so that will be fixed. Domain 2 is governance and management of IT. So we again understand here the terms like IT governance, organizational structures, standards, policies, procedures, and all of these maturity models, risk management. So quite again a very interesting domain. From the risk management, so you probably would be more comfortable with this domain. Okay, so then domain 3 is about information system development and implementation. This kind of becomes a little more technical, slightly technical concepts we need to understand. We talk about software development methodologies, for example, project management, while you create those business pieces, and so on. Domain 4, information systems, operations, and business resilience, 23%. Percentage here. Again, so a lot of concepts here regarding things like asset management, operations management, database governance, and so on. So concepts on business continuity plan, disaster recovery plans. So it's important for any organization to have a resilient systems. So as an auditor, you need to be able to understand what does it mean by having a resilient systems and having DCP and VCP and BRP in place. And so you need to understand these concepts, very important. And in the final domain, a big one is 27% is the protection of information assets. And again, we understand a lot. It's a lot more technical here in this particular domain. And I think here we talk about things like encryption, the PKIs, virtualizations, IoTs, and so on. You can see all of them here. We also talk about evidence collection, incident response. So these are the topics. I'm not going to get into each of these detail for now. You can, and so I would highly recommend that you go over these job practice areas to give you a sense of what is relevant. So for the keeping the time in mind, so I'm not going into too much of detail here. Like I said, this is something that I would want you to go over and kind of understand. Okay. And anyways, when we do the course or when you study, you will be going over these things. There are certain resources that they're provided. The one that I've shown it to you is this one that I just shown it to you. The other one is also here. Let me quickly open this up. I have downloaded. It's here. Let's quickly go over this. So this is something which, again, I would want you to go over. Okay, so it gives you a lot of detailed about the exam. If you focus on CISA only for the time being, so kind of talks about the eligibility requirement, for example. 5 years is what you require of experience, and there are waivers if that is something which is required, then you might want to opt for that. The details are there in the website. We talk about the domains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the exam languages also available. I'm not too sure that is relevant. Questions, the 150 questions, MCQs, choice questions with 4 options, and you have 4 hours to complete the exam. Okay, so that's I mentioned that before. The exam fees is $575 for ISACA member, and if you're not a member yet, you pay about $760. Okay, yeah. So you asked me, Pankaj. So here we go. So what I think the member fee is about $135 if I'm not mistaken, and there is about another $10, $20 odd for your local chapter as well. Having said that, becoming an ISACA member is obviously advantage. Okay, I was a ISACA member even before I took the exam for many years, and I would benefit quite a lot from the interactions, the material that they would send. So all of those things was very useful. So it's important that as far as I'm concerned, I would highly recommend that you become a member and enjoy the benefits. Okay, so even here, if you become a member itself, if you put those numbers as well, I think you'll get a very immediate benefit here. Now, if you have to buy certain materials as well, and that also kind of you get a discount if you're a member. Okay, so all in all, I will recommend that you become a member. There are usually benefits, many benefits that they provide, and one of them, of course, is the discount rate for your exams and materials and so on. Okay, so the details are here, and so you can register for your exam. And as I said, there are certain sites. Again, you can go and visit those sites, the exam centers rather, the PSI test site. But I also mentioned that there is an online process as well. I'll kind of talk about that. So for that, you need to kind of register for the exam. You need to create an account on isaca.org. It's quite easy, and it's a very simple process. Okay, so you might want to do that. So once you pay the examination fee and you register and pay the fee, you can take the exam within the next 12 months. So the ISACA has changed their exam, format and all those things over the period of time. Back in the days when we took the exam, it was a paper-based exam. They used to have this exam twice in a year. Okay, so it was a fixed date and time. Go to a particular location, usually a hotel or a big premises, and you have to be there, and you'd have hundreds of people in that particular room and take their exams. It was like a school exam that you used to take, and it was a paper-based. Thankfully, later on they changed it to computer-based exam, but there were certain restrictions. Like you could only take the exam again 3 times in the window and etc. But thankfully they've removed all of those restrictions, and now you can take the exam anytime. There are no restrictions. It's just the restrictions I think about you should take the exam within 12 months. I think that's a lot of time. Okay, so I'll just kind of leave it for now, and you can kind of go through these documents, as I said. So you'll have more details about it. Okay. Let me go back to my slides, and I think I'll take you through some of the important points. Here we go. So benefits, I think I've talked about this. So again, I will not kind of discuss this again. So to understand the process, so you register for the exam, right? So you pay the exam fee, pass the exam, and once you pass the exam, you also need to provide certain documentation. And this is where you need to provide your work experience. There's a form that you need to provide. I think you need to pay $50 for that as well. And you kind of fill out a form. You need somebody else to kind of endorse you. And then you provide that form, a completed form to ISACA to prove that you have that 5 years of experience. And then after which you are going to be a CISA certified. Okay, so they will usually come back to you with email saying that congratulations, you've been accepted and you're now a CISA certified professional. So that's the process. So that can you take the exam even if you do not have that experience? And the answer is absolutely yes, absolutely yes. So many people do that. So if for some reason you do not have those experience and take the exam, you can do that as well. Okay, so so being certified is one part of this. Somebody want the waiver, etc. Right? The details are there. Just quickly take you through it. So the details are here. Substitution waivers may be obtained to a maximum of 3 years. You can take a look at this. I think some of these things may be applicable to you. Okay, so if any of these things is applicable, you can take it. So like, for example, if you have some university semester credit hours, that can also work. If you have a master's degree in information security or information technology, that can also work. Okay, so if you have information system experience or a non-IS auditing experience, you can substitute with 1 year experience. These details are here, applies to you. We can talk about it. So if anything, individual discussions, we can have that in the Q&A session. All right. But now these are the generic information. Everything is available. We can discuss anything specific, private. We can do that. Do we get the certification from the date of providing documentation or from the last the date test was taken? From the so you could have taken the test 4 years back. So you would have in the meantime earned those experience and provided that documentation now. So you probably start your certification that date when that process. So which means now, whatever the date is. Okay. All right. I hope that makes sense. Let's go back to the presentation. So we've understood the becoming certified. That is one part. Now to maintain, that is another part. So once you're CISA certified, there are two things which you need to do. One is earn something called CPE. Okay, CPE, continuing professional education points. So you earn CPEs by doing certain activities. Okay, so there are a lot of activities you can do. So for example, basic thing like watching a webinar for an hour, that can earn you 1 CPE. There are a lot of courses that you can take. And so there's a whole list of activities you could do. It's available on the website. It's a long list. I probably don't need to go over that list. So it's a long list of activities, and it's quite easy to do that. So you do not have to worry about it. Okay. So even they have CISA, ISACA provides a lot of activities also, kind of send you some surveys to do, and you can earn some CPs there, or you can attend certain training sessions and webinars and so on. There's a lot of ways to earn that. I don't think you're gonna find any challenge here, unless you are unless you stop learning at all. You don't do anything of these things. But I suppose as somebody who's in this field of information security, you might want to be continuously updating yourself, learning. So all of those learning, whatever courses that you learn, those things would apply to your CPEs. Okay, so there's a whole lot of activities. I don't think there's going to be any challenge. One of the things you might want to do is try to keep a proof, like maybe a screenshot. So if there's somebody who audits, or they might ask you show this proof, you probably would want to just show proof that yes, I attended this particular webinar or attended this particular training course. So just keep those in hand if ever there is an audit. Otherwise, usually you will not be asked. Okay, so one of is of course there's a maintenance fee that you need to pay also, that I talked about earlier on. So it's quite beneficial if you do so, as I mentioned. Now, you can also lose your CISA certification. So there are a few ways you can lose it. One is if you, well, do not own those CPEs, right? Or you don't pay those annual maintenance fee, or you kind of, violate any of the policies or any of your ethics and so on. So that would also, your certification would be taken off. So just be careful about this. Even if you've done all the hard work, you probably don't want to do this. Okay. An engineering master's degree in electronics and telecommunications considered for waiver? I don't think so. We can talk about it later on, but I don't think so. Okay, so the exam preparation, what are you going to do? Okay, so what you should do is, first of all, become familiar with the CISA job practice areas. So how do you do so? Well, you can self-study. You can join one of our courses. We are starting up a new batch. We'll talk about it later. So you can be part of that, learn those concepts. It's a very conceptual exam. So you need to understand the what and the why, and not so much about the how. So this course is not about the how. We don't teach you how to audit. Okay, but we kind of have to learn those concepts which is required during the audit process. So to help you make those decisions. And so what to do in certain situations, what is the best thing to do, which tools to use, or whatever, so is that a right control or not? So kind of learn those concepts. It's not about the how part, but the what and the why. So that is important. And so as I said, it covers quite a wide of topics, and so this is where you will spend most of your time. Okay, most of the time you will be studying and understanding those concepts. Okay, and one of my, as a trader, one of my responsibilities to ensure that you understand those concepts, understand and be able to use that in your everyday job, as well as to pass the exam as well. Okay, the next part, of course, is self-assessment. Now, I will be a little cautious about this self-assessment when people talk about using dumps, practicing, and so I have had a lot of people who come up to me say, I have practiced 4,000 questions, 5,000 questions. I still failed the exam. Okay, so then I asked them a simple questions like, for example, what's the difference between due care, due diligence, for example? Okay, or some of those concepts, right? So what's important in an audit charter or whatever it is. So I ask those basic questions, and I know immediately that the person hasn't understood those concepts. So this is something which you have to be very careful about. So I highly recommend people not to use this self-assessments practice test as a way to study. Okay, don't use it to study. Okay, so the question is, never use it. No, you should use it to validate your knowledge. Okay, not as a way to study. So remember, these questions will not be repeated. And I get that quite a lot, saying none of these questions, 4,000, 5,000 questions, none of them came in the exam. And it's not going to come because, as I said, these exams are very conceptual. It's not, there are many, unfortunately, many certification course. I've taken up quite a few of them where you can get a dump, you study that, you have zero knowledge, but you pass the exam. This is not one of those courses. You have to understand. That's what I say. Going back to that, familiarity is important. And the third point, which is iterative study. So you got to study, maybe multiple times. I would say horizon about, depending on your experience, depending on your skills and knowledge, maybe a horizon about 3 to 6 months. I usually ask my candidates to take a horizon of 3 months to take the exam. Some of them are well prepared, so they might even take sooner. Then that's not too many of them, but they do, and which is fantastic. But having said that, iterative study and self-assessment, as I said, use it as a way to assess, not as a way to study, and never kind of mug up, try to memorize those questions. It's never going to come in the exam. And similarly, you have to avoid cramming. This is a sure way to fail the exam. Okay, so as I said before, the familiarity with the concepts is important, and to be able to use that concept in different scenarios, because the exam is usually going to be a scenario-based question. And so, having given a scenario, what is it that you should do? Okay, so if you kind of just cram the concept, cram the definition, well, you're gonna. And finding a study group is important if you want to kind of keep on studying. Now, with Infosec Trade, we create a study group who part of the process. We have the community. We are in constant touch with the trainer, with the team, with the group, and so this is something which should benefit which being part of InfoSec. Okay, so I would like to quickly take you through basic introduction to this course, and like I said, after which you will probably do some some questions to help you understand how the questions would look like in the exam. Okay, so let's basic understanding here. So we talk about this particular course, which is about IS audit, right? So information system audit. So what is information system audit? So here, when we perform an IS audit, this is about validating, examining, or testing certain systems, information systems, right? So to determine whether it is in compliance. So that's a very important term, compliance with the applicable laws, regulations, contracts, or industry guidelines. So what if you're not compliant? Well, then there can be serious consequences for the organization. Okay, so we have to be compliant. There are no shortcuts about it. So that's one of the reasons you do that, right? You might want to be compliant with your governance criteria. You may have your own internal processes, your internal procedures, policies. So you want to have those controls in place. Yeah, so you got to kind of audit to check those are in place. We also want to ensure that there is appropriate levels of confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Well, this is important. Now, as part of security is concerned, these are the three pillars of security, the foundation level pillars: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Wish I could talk about it more, but I think we'll run out of time. So we'll probably discuss that during the course. We'll understand this in more detail. But remember that security primarily is about protecting the CIA of your information. And so we want to understand whether your operations, your controls in the organization, they're all working effectively and efficiently. So that's what the IS audit is all about, right? So when you perform in this audit, there are certain roles that come into the picture, important roles. The audit roles. So typical roles that we will need to which we learn about or will have is the auditor. Well, that's the person, and it's you, the competent person who is going to perform the audit. Okay, what about the audit? So there are various kind of audits. It could be an information security audit, a financial audit, a business audit, operations audit, whatever. The focus here is on the information audit. So you have an auditor, and that's typically you in your role as an auditor. And you'll hear this term all the time, the auditee. Auditee, what does it mean? It means it's the organization and the people being audited. Okay, so as an auditor, whether you're internal auditor or an external auditor, so if you audit a particular organization, that is called the auditor. Okay, and so you might also have a client, and so the client is the person or an organization that requests an audit. Okay, if it's an internal client, well, they may be the auditee themselves. Okay, they may be the shareholders or the audit committee. Or if they're an external clients, the client for external audits, the clients may include customers or some regulators who will insist to have that audit for that particular organization. Okay, so somebody else requesting to audit a particular company, so they are the clients, right? So you need to be familiar with these terms. Sometimes people get a little confused, but this is important for you to understand. The role of an auditor, auditee, and the client. So how are they all related? That is important for us to understand. So this is what it looks like. You may have a shareholders, you may have the board of directors, right? So we need to understand a little more bit about board of directors. We've discussed that in domain 2, their responsibilities. Now, the board of directors may have, well, they may be providing direction for the company. Okay, they're the ones who provide those directions, they guide the organization. Now, the CEO is part of the management group, and there might be another subcommittee called an audit committee, which is typically empowered by the board of directors, and they are the ones, audit committee, which kind of is responsible for managing the auditors and all the auditing processes. Okay, so the auditors, whether internal or external, they usually report to the audit committee. Yeah, so what if the auditors had to report to the CEO? What is the problem there? So the report that the auditors would provide could be biased. Okay, be biased. There might be fears of retribution, etc. So we want to keep that role very separate. And you have audit committees. They may consist of people who are independent auditors, who have nothing to do with the day-to-day management of the company. Okay, so they are very independent. So we want that independence for the auditors. So as I said, the audit committee is established by the board of directors. Okay, and so they can they are not part of the executive team. They could also have independent outside directors for example, and they are responsible for the appointment, compensation, oversight of all the auditors. Okay, so auditors directly report to them. The auditors may have a kind of have a matrix reporting, but usually it's the audit committee. And they might invite the members of the management to, well, if there is an audit committee meetings, the management team might also join part of that. And so that's usually the structure, how it is. And so here what we're trying to also establish is the auditor's independence. So we want to ensure that there is conflict of interest. So this is, I like this particular explanation here. The auditor's independence, what does it mean? It means the probability that an auditor will report an error in their audit report that she has discovered it. So kind of interesting one. Anyway, so auditor's independence is extremely important, as I said. Well, if an IS auditor recommends a specific vendor, then the auditor's professional independence is compromised. Remember, as important as an IS auditor, you should not be recommending a specific vendor, like use this particular Cisco firewall, this particular model. No, never do that. Okay, so these are some of the tips that you need to remember. So never recommend any specific vendor, because then there will be it might kind of it might kind of hinder your independence. There might be a perceived understanding or feeling that you are biased towards a particular vendor. You should never have that. Anyway, so when you talk about auditors' independence, there can be a real independence. So in many cases, if there is no independence, real independence, where the auditor there may be a pressure on them, it can be influence. There can be even there have been cases where these auditors have been forced to kind of look into the other way, right? So we want real independence of the mind, that they should be able to give their audit report as without any bias, with the topmost integrity and the utmost professional level report, without any fear, without any pressure, without any influence. That's what we want, real independence. Okay, that's important. However, there is a perceived independence as well. There's a perceived independence in the way it appears, how the others view the auditor. Okay, and so there has been cases I wouldn't want to go very specific, but there has been cases. Some of you might have read about it, where some auditors were appointed by the government. There was a perceived lack of independence, where the particular auditing firm, the owner was, kind of, like I would say, very close to the government. So that kind of perceived independence, again, is a problem, because then the people will feel that the report that they come up with is going to be biased. So that's important, to have both real independence as well as perceived independence, which is the independence in appearance. Okay. So what are the threats to the auditor's independence? Well, if you self-review, okay, that should never happen. Auditors review the work that they produce. Nobody should do that. Okay, so self-review is obviously very not recommended anywhere. Advocacy. So yeah, so that's another thing there. Okay, so see if the auditor promotes the client's view and compromises, and so that's another thing. Intimidation. So there might be some kind of a perceived or real threat. So again, that might result in a biased report. Familiarity. Now, if the auditor becomes too familiar or sympathetic to the client's interest, okay, that is again a concern, right? While some level of friendliness is important, but you can't be best friends with them and try to understand why they did something which they were not supposed to do, and so on. That you can't be empathetic and sympathetic in this case. Your job is to report as it is. And self-interest. Again, if the auditor is benefiting from the client, then there's a problem again. So in many cases, there's an auditing firm, and the auditing firm also has certain other services, and they're auditing a particular company. So the company usually do not take other services from that particular auditing firm. Okay, otherwise, like I said, there can be again an independence issue, conflict of interest. Okay, so usually they don't take any of the services, just the audit services. Otherwise, again, a problem there. So these are some of the threats to auditors' independence, which is very important, as I said. All right, so these are some of the topics which you need to understand. Let me see if there's anything else here. I don't think I put too much content. Yeah, so the other term, we've been talking about information systems. CISA, CISA is about information system auditing, right? Now, what is the difference between information technology and information systems? That's another term that I want you to be aware of. And let's understand what is information technology. Typically is, well, the hardware, the software components that is necessary for a system to operate. Okay, so you have, let's say, a computer, a server, a router, switch. Those are typical information technology systems. But when you talk about information systems, it is more than just an information technology. It is, in fact, a combination of people, processes, and the information technology. Okay, so all of them need to come together to meet the organization's objectives, the organization goals, their business needs. So as part of this process, you will have to understand that we're looking at the people, processes, and the information technology. This, when you put it all together, this is what the information systems is about. So as an auditor, as a information systems auditor, you're not just auditing a piece of hardware or a software. No, that's may do that, but it's more than that. It's the processes, it's the people who follow those processes which is supported by information technology. So all of them have to come together, and this is what you will, as an auditor, need to audit. Okay, so I hope this is clear. Very basic concept. So hence this particular course, CISA, is about information systems. So we will discuss all this people, process, information technology coming together. While we might understand these in bits and pieces, but we'll put it all together and understand how this works. Okay, that's the part of the course. Right. I think, is there anything else I put in here? Yeah, just one, I think briefly, I'm not going to get into too much detail here again, is the audit process phases. There are typically 3 different phases we talk about. One is the planning phase, and then the actual field work and documentation phase, and finally the reporting or the follow-up phase. And so planning phase obviously has many things here, you know, kind of determining the audit subject and what to do, have those pre-planning, everything ready. So once that is done, then you actually go and do the test or the audit. So we acquire data and so on. And finally, you probably have to report the whatever finding that you have. Now, remember, you, as an auditor, your job is not to fix problems. Okay, never think about fixing a problem. Your job is to report as it is, whatever is there, you report that, right? Nothing else. And so never try fix any problems. You just report as it is with evidence. That's important again, with evidence. So you must have enough evidence which can be used to prove your point. So you cannot make any claim without any evidence. So evidence gathering is another concept that you will understand there in the course. All right. So what exactly will be the evidence? So evidence could be anything which is supporting the thing that you are auditing. For example, your audit, there's a fraud, so you should be able to identify what the fraud is and have that evidence to prove that yes, there's a fraud here. The transactions was sent to a person which was not supposed to be, for example. So you have those screenshots or the transaction logs or whatever it is. Or if you're auditing, let's say, a control, okay, maybe a firewall. The firewall rule is not working properly, so you have that evidence and say if we were able to whatever do whatever which is not supposed to be done, right? So you have those evidence. All right, so I think it's a good time to now end the session here. Thank you so much. All the best, and keep learning.